I'm a strategic marketeer to help you separate the wheat from chaff to drive business growth. Till we reach Assam, where we saw an accident happen. And when we asked the truck driver who had escaped with no injury as to what happened, and he said that as soon as he realized the brakes had failed, he just opened the door and jumped out. So then we realized that the reason seatbelt is perceived as a death trap is that they won't be able to jump out in time. If I'm an iPhone user, and I've been an iPhone user, and let's say I'm going to stay an iPhone user, so in other words, no advertising is needed for me. Any advertising thrown my way is a waste. But when I see shot on iPhone, I'm saying, wait a minute, I didn't know I can take pictures like that. So I'm going to try and use my iPhone a little better next time. And what is that going to do? That's going to make me better engaged with the product, which means the next time I'm going to buy a product, I'm actually going to be predisposed to buy an iPhone because now I got a better relationship with the product. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is that great marketing is not about deciding what to do. It's equally about deciding what not to do.
What's something new happening in your life right now?
Travel is my other hobby besides music. And I just crossed 50 countries and a few more to go.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Just Ravi. Subscribe to my channel for conversations at the edge with thought leaders from the branding, marketing, and the business world. Conversations that will ignite new ideas with rough and sharp edges. Hi, Atul. Thrilled to have you on my show.
Very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
If I requested you to tweet your profile, what would you say?
Well, first of all, it won't be a tweet; it'll be an X.
I know.
Yeah, but I know exactly what you mean. I think I would, assuming there are still restrictions on the number of characters in it, I would say I'm a strategic marketeer to help you separate the wheat from chaff to drive business growth. So my book is about lies, damn lies, and marketing. So that's sort of the theme. That sort of is what's driven my career, my profession over the last few years. That I've felt that there was a lot of muddiness, a lot of lies were being told in the name of marketing, a lot of false promises, empty promises were being made, leading marketing to get a pretty bad reputation. So my book was a small attempt to sort of separate wheat from chaff and sort of say, okay, this is where things go wrong. This is how it should be done. And this is how business leaders and business owners can actually do real marketing without getting hammered with some of the fake stuff that's out there.
The premise and the origin story that we will get to in a minute itself is a beautiful way, a very authentic way to convert the skeptics, because you yourself started from there. And how
being a big skeptic, being an absolutely big skeptic, yes.
Yeah. So before we get to how you believe the engineering skills helped you for marketing, for being a marketeer that can separate wheat from chaff, how did it happen that an engineer and a committed, passionate engineer converted to marketing?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question, and I think it's not just a personal question, but I think it also reveals a little bit of me, and perhaps your viewers and listeners some of them might get some lessons from there. So as you alluded to this, I was dead against sales and marketing. In fact, when I was growing up, both in high school and then even during college, during IIT, my years at IIT, I had a very low, very, very low opinion of sales and marketing people. I thought they were charlatans, they were gas bags, they only talked and they had their hands in other people's pocket, and that was their goal in life. They did not create any real value in this world. And I chose to do mechanical engineering because I wanted to be a car designer. So I could have done computer science, electronics, anything, but my interest was automotive engineering. So I decided to do mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi. And when I graduated, about 2/3 of my class, maybe even 80% of my classmates were heading abroad to get their PhDs or MBAs or whatever, but I said, no, I want to really create something here. And I was very fortunate that I got into what was then the DCM management training program, the big old DCM conglomerate. And then we went through 1 year of training, and then we were made available to all companies within the DCM family. One of the companies, which was actually ranked the highest amongst my colleagues as the preferred choice where they wanted to be, was the DCM Toyota LCV project. It wasn't even a company yet. It was called the LCV project, Light Commercial Vehicle Project. The surprising thing was that there's a gentleman by the name of the person who was the chief executive designate, Mr. T.G. Kriplani. He was a real solid engineer. He was in his, I think, mid-60s, maybe late 60s back then. And I was a 21, 22-year-old guy. And he welcomes me on my very first day, and sits in his office, and he tells me that we're going to put you in marketing. And that's when I'm sure he must have seen all the color leave my face and the smile vanish and all that. And since he was a mechanical engineer himself, he wanted to sort of figure this out as to why am I not so happy about this. And I told him that, I did engineering and wanted to be at this thing and that thing, went through the whole thing. And he said, look, there are only 19 of us in this project. We got 6 engineers. We got only one other marketing person. So we need help in marketing. Why don't you take this assignment in marketing for the next, 18, 20 months. And then when we do have an org chart, a real org chart, when we have a real company, he says, I promise you, I'll ask you if you want to be an engineer or wherever you want to be. We'll see, we'll reevaluate that. But right now we need help. Everybody's doing everything. So right now we need you to help our marketing guy. So I said, okay, let's do that. I didn't have much of a leverage to negotiate any further anyway. And that's how I was assigned. And I tell people that I was dragged into marketing. Now, the net result was that the very first project they gave me, I think the company benefited a lot because, they really listened to what I had to tell them after my first 4 months. But more than that, I discovered that marketing can not only be a lot of fun, but it also uses my engineering knowledge, which was very important to me. The project that I was given was basically drive around the country, right from Delhi to Kanyakumari, and then all the way to the east, and then to Bombay, and this and that. Gave me 4 months, gave me 2 vehicles and a colleague and a couple of drivers, and survey potential customers, potential dealers, potential repair shops, and come back and sort of report back and sort of say, how will we go to market in this? And they said that it's a clean sheet of paper. We don't have to imitate what Tata is doing or what Ambassador is doing or what Matador is doing or what Jeep is doing. We can learn from them, but we don't have to do exactly that. We are starting afresh. So that was the project. And I totally loved it. Traveling the country, driving this new Toyota pickup truck, and learning a lot, using my engineering knowledge to explain and sort of using my engineering knowledge to explain back to the engineers back in the company as to what did I learn from the customers and how does that translate into real engineering. That I thought was one of my breakthroughs, where I said that marketing can be a very interesting career, where I can use my engineering. I'm sorry, I gave you a very long answer, but I still, after almost 40 years, I still feel very passionate about it.
Yeah. Marketing is given that even in my family, my brother who did finance, and I went the market research and then advertising route, used to say, "Ki aita galna hai." Like these are talks. The real deal, nuts and bolts is, money and how do you do business, etc. And now recently, Atul, as people come and talk on my channel, they even talk about the value marketing is creating in terms of emotions. It's like we are just selling a product. We sold hope. We made them feel glad and less guilty or more content, etc. So, marketing is also looking at how it's humanized. I mean, there is potential to really be looking at your consumer as a human.
Yeah, no, but that's a very good point, because when I think of how has engineering helped me in marketing, if I were to take that question, and my answer is that if you think of what does engineering really teach you, especially in a place like IIT, sort of the elite institution, it really teaches you problem solving. engineers are very good at looking at something and say, here's the problem, here's how we'll fix it. And doing the analysis, sort of almost a dispassionate kind of analysis. That's what engineering is all about. It's not about learning any formulas or pistons and this and that. I mean, that's the mechanics of it. But in essence, you're learning how to solve problems. If you think about business, what does a business do? A business is going to be successful. If you think of business as my job is to sell you windows or doors or pens or Coca-Cola or cars, I think you are shortchanging yourself as a business person. Your job is not to sell anything. Your job is not to market anything. If you as a business leader, if you make your job of solving somebody's problem through your product that you might have, through a service you might have, through some whatever you might have, that is I think the right way to approach business and marketing. So you're not out there selling anything, you're solving somebody's problems. And if you do that, that's when you build loyalty.
Really, really putting it in perspective what marketing is doing. And there's another beautiful analogy that you take now. In the next few questions will be about, how you're putting in perspective a lot of things in very simple terms. So when you say marketing is like a bridge, that is A. B, when you compare it with headlights and sales and marketing, you put it in perspective. These few things, let's start with it for people to get into perspective. What is marketing really doing in an organization?
Yeah. So in fact, if I were to do the second edition of the book, I'll expand on that bridge thing, because the bridge still sort of conveys that you have something in the factory that you make, and then there's a consumer at the other end that you are trying to sort of get that product to, and somehow you need to get there. It still is about getting from point A to point B. That is still true, but I think if you approach it from the point of view of solving problems for that customer, I think you come up with a better way to explain what is the role of marketing. And the marketing's role is that you present first of all, that's the other mistake many people make. People think of marketing as something that comes out of the company heading towards the customer, whether it's advertisement, whether it's a message, whether it's a product, whether it's a brochure, whether it's a website. It's like something sitting at the center, throwing something out. Actually, true marketing doesn't start there. That's only half of the marketing. The true marketing actually starts from the customer. The customer tells the company, or the company seeks the answers from the customer as to what exactly are you suffering from? What exactly are you not happy about? What exactly are your problems? What exactly are your pain points? Those are not the easiest things to ask. Because somebody might say, I want this, but why do they want this? What is the underlying pain? So that's something I learned in my first four months of the project. Because that was a job that I had, I just couldn't. You go and try and promote a new vehicle, and which is going to be priced 1.5 times more than a Tata truck, and it's going to be half the size and half the weight capacity of a Tata truck. It's a difficult proposition. So we had to uncover what is the pain point that they have with the existing vehicles, where we could fit in as a potential solution. So that's sort of what real marketing is. It starts from the customer. You learn from the customer. You come up with a solution for that, you present it that way, and then you emanate it out towards your customers. So that's sort of that can be the full bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, the two-way bridge. And
exactly, it's a two-way bridge, precisely.
Yes. And Atul, more and more, even for branding and building a brand, communication with whole social media and content, and you being part of that conversation as a brand and learning all the time about who you are to them, etc. And this whole lack of control is becoming so healthy. And if you look at marketing itself as a two-way bridge, then you got to encourage that at every level, even as product feedback. And I can imagine you in those 4 months, talking to everyone and like learning and being surprised and being delighted about how useful this was to the entire organization and to your mentor and boss at that time. Because I started with consumer research, and I light up every time because
Yeah, and some of the, in fact, I think you read the book, so you probably will remember an anecdote which happened out in Assam, where I mean, throughout our research, what we were discovering was that people were not interested in seat belts. This is 1983, 84. So there were no seat belt laws. There were no vehicles being sold with seat belts. But Toyota had sent us a vehicle which had seat belts. So we wanted to decide whether we should introduce the vehicle with seat belts or not. And if so, how much should we price it and all that. And of course, we had all the data which shows that seat belts save lives. But then as we were asking the question, not a single person, not one person that we surveyed said, yeah, I want seat belts and I'll be willing to pay X for that. In fact, many people pushed back and looked at it and sort of said, you know what, this is... in fact, they said it's a jab, it's sort of a Punjabi word that it's like I'm going to be bound by something. And they would not pay for it. Some of them even went as far as saying that it looks like it's some kind of a death trap, which didn't make any sense to us, the youngster engineers who had all the data and the facts. Till we reached Assam, where we saw an accident happen. And when we asked the truck driver who had escaped with no injury as to what happened, and he said that as soon as he realized the brakes had failed, he just opened the door and jumped out. So then we realized that the reason seatbelt is perceived as a death trap is that they won't be able to jump out in time because they'll have to unbuckle themselves. Because the whole Indian driver mindset back then was when things are going bad, when an accident is imminent, just bail out. So that was the realization where I figured out that all the facts, all the data, all the numbers, all the history from the world over is not going to be able to overcome the consumer mindset, because that is built on personal experience. And it's very hard to convince a customer that, no, when you're belted in, don't jump out, and trust me, you will survive.
Yeah, amazing how beliefs have been built and how you have to work with them. Otherwise, they work against you. So
exactly.
Yeah. And Atul, so now to the other aspect of sales and marketing, with the digital strategy coming in, and with people thinking that marketers, wanting it to be accountable and more lead generation and more focus on conversion. And, this, again, the focus, for this whole thing has become, I have to create this much sales. And surprisingly, sometimes even in the consumer journey, they map it out and everything, and then not focus on the awareness or the brand building, it becomes very short term. So this whole headlight analogy that you have, because it gives some status to sales also. So
well,
please,
I think I think sales deserves not just some status, but pretty significant status.
Yes.
In fact, here's the irony of this. I've been doing this for almost 40 years now. Most people use sales and marketing in one breath. It's like sales and marketing. What is he doing? He's doing sales and marketing. Then when you talk to the salespeople, most of them will prefer that they were called marketing. In other words, if they had to tell this to their girlfriend or boyfriend, they'll probably say that I do marketing for a firm, as opposed to I'm a salesperson. Be that as it may, I'm just reporting what I've seen. Okay. But then when we go into the details of it from within the company, and if you think of this as a business management question as to what's the difference between sales and marketing, the way I look at this is that they both have to work together, but they both essentially are supposed to drive business growth for the company. But there is a distinction between the two. And that's where I came up with this analogy of headlights. Like in a typical car, in a typical vehicle, we have a high beam and we have a low beam. Now, if either one of them is not functioning, we'll consider that to be, my car needs to be repaired. There are only headlights or high beams, or I have only low beams, but you need both of them there. So what is the purpose of a high beam? The purpose of a high beam is that you get to see, maybe 300 meters ahead, maybe 400 meters ahead. see where the curves are, see if there's a deer crossing, see what's out there 300, 400 meters ahead. But if that's all you had, you'll not be able to see what's immediately in front of you, which is also pretty important because that's where the car is going to go in the next 2 seconds. So low beam is sort of what I think of as a sales organization, because their job is I need to make some sales this week, this month, this quarter. Yes, I'm interested in what will happen in 2024, but frankly, if I have to choose between should I spend time on working on next month's quota versus 2024, I'd rather work on next month's quota because 2024 will happen, it's good 6 months away. Marketing's job, on the other hand, should not be day to day, week to week, even month to month. They should be sort of scanning on a more outward basis, more of a long distance basis, to sort of say, what kind of products should we have? What kind of services should we have? Where is the market going? What is likely to happen? So that's how I use the low beam and the high beam headlight analogy to make a distinction between sales and marketing. And I hope people also understand that when I use that analogy, I mean that both of them are equally important and they have to work together.
Yeah. So it seems like the elder brother, in the family, marketing, it's like think ahead, plan for. I guess that's why it gets more. It's like the mature elder brother, Okay.
That's one way to look at it, but then there's a flip side to that, because if the company is not doing too well, then in some ways, it's a matter of survival. I think sales is probably going to save the day faster than the marketeer might. Yeah. So, of course, you can convert a marketing person into a sales guy and send him outside and make him sell. But if you think of what does the marketing look at? If marketing looks at 6 months and beyond, but if there's fire on the deck that needs to be taken care of, I think sales is probably going to be the younger brother, but the one that saves the day.
Hand in hand. It has to be hand
in hand. Yeah. So again, I don't want to make it let's bash sales together, So.
Yeah. Not at all. Why would we?
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we have big M. So I think my whole elder brother thing came from this. There is a big M and there is a small m. What is this? It's so interesting. It's like really putting it all in perspective, like all.
Yeah. So, my background, in case you didn't discover this, I'll just go through this. So I told you I started with Toyota and then got my MBA at Yale. And then for the first 25 years or so of my professional career, I was a marketing person, marketing manager, product manager, marketing director, vice president of marketing, chief marketing officer, and so on and so forth. All, the whole range in various companies, automotive, industrial, healthcare, technology, so on and so forth. Then for the last 10 years or so, I've been working as a consultant, bringing my marketing knowledge to small and mid-sized companies. So I'm a fractional CMO. So I'm a partner in a firm called Chief Outsiders. So during the last 10 years, I've had a lot of interactions. I've personally worked on about 45 projects over the last 10 years. So I've interacted with 45 different CEOs and their teams. So one common thread that I discovered in talking to the CEOs was that they had very limited understanding of marketing. So whenever I asked them what marketing is or describe what marketing is, they described it correctly, but incompletely. So, I was reminded of the Indian parable of the, 5 blind men describing an elephant. So they all were describing the elephant, the piece of the elephant correctly, but nobody was really describing the elephant. So what are the common things that people were describing? Well, it's a website. It does advertising. It's PR. It's social media. It's digital. All of that was being presented, and that's what marketing is. And yeah, that is part of marketing. But then whenever I asked them, what else is marketing? What else do you think of when you think of marketing? It was basically, no, that's pretty much it. And that's when I discovered that there is a big gap. And what people were focusing on, so I figured that I need to explain what full elephant is. And I need to acknowledge that what they are describing is marketing, but it's a subset of marketing. So I label that small m. So small m marketing is the more visible part of marketing. That's what most people are familiar with. If you talk to somebody, what's marketing, is the brochure or the website and all that. But what's behind the scenes marketing, which is not described by typical CEOs, especially in B2B, is things like, what's the strategy? What channels are we going to take? What's the positioning? What's the messaging? Are we going to price it? What's our larger game plan? That is part of marketing. And that is what I call big M marketing. And one of the points I make is that, yes, small m marketing is very important. In fact, in a typical healthy organization, about 80% of your marketing dollars and time should be spent on small m marketing. But if you spend only on small m without paying any attention to big M, there's a very good chance that almost half of your dollars that you're spending on small m are going to go to waste. Why? Because you haven't worked out the foundation. You haven't worked out the strategy. So my advice to my clients has always been that you need to take some part of your budget and you're to spend that on big M marketing, get your foundation right, get your strategy right, and then small m will flow more smoothly for you. So that's sort of the big distinction between big M, which is sort of the upfront strategy, foundational work, and then the more visible part, which is small m.
Right, right. So now we go to the measurable ROI aspect. So if you can measure it, you can track it, you can manage it. The SMART objectives, there's a whole lot of emphasis, and rightfully, on measuring it. Even personal goals, today all the technology in health is all about, for all lifestyle diseases, it is about being able to measure it, track it, manage it. The whole loops have become so important. So when you talk about the obsession with it is a little bit not taking into account certain other aspects that are intangible. Could you please explain, because this is really heartening, Atul, because I'm in the brand strategy space, and we have to often deal with the intangibles that are very important, although we're trying to measure it, etc. But we say all the things that are most important, and of course, I'm an Indian and an Asian. Most important things in life are the intangibles, which is very difficult to, just kind of put a number to. What would you say? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so just to sort of emphasize this point, that I am an engineer by training, and I'm an engineer who loved to be an engineer. So I love data, I love analysis, I read a lot about engineering and numbers and all that. I'm very comfortable with. I even teach business math at a graduate level. So I'm not shy of numbers. I'm not shy of analytics or anything like that. But then over the years, I've also realized that numbers is not everything. And numbers can be abused, believe it or not. So yes, ROI is very important. You make decisions, you make choices based on ROI. But when you don't have an ROI, in other words, when you're not able to calculate an ROI, which would be, before you throw it out, unless you have an ROI, it's not worth looking at, you should examine why is it that you're not able to calculate the ROI. And if there are good reasons for that, also ask the question, what is the alternative to measuring an ROI? In other words, if I decide to do this, even though I cannot measure an ROI, how will I know that I'm succeeding? Because there's no point in the business world, you don't want to do anything without knowing whether it's working or not. But so my point in the book is that ROI is important, but when you don't have an ROI, don't throw it out. In fact, another inside story on this, the book has 19 chapters. And if it wasn't for COVID, it probably would have had 24 by now. But the first thought that I had, in other words, 7 years ago, when this was just a PowerPoint, the first slide was what is now chapter 14. So the book started in my head on this ROI conversation. So again, this is close to my heart, because this is where it sort of, this is the seed for the whole book. So one example that I can give you, and I'm sorry, I'm going to give you an example from the US, but it'll make sense to you. So, Apple the world's biggest company today, and the most admired, the most successful, and all the platitudes that you can throw at it, they probably are still insufficient to describe what the company is. So that company is based in the Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley here. And if you go from San Francisco to San Jose, they're close to San Jose. So that's about a 50-mile drive, 70 kilometers or so. And during the daytime, it can take about an hour and a half because of traffic and whatnot. So in that 70-kilometer, 50-mile road on either side, it's a nice road. There are close to a dozen billboards of Apple, huge billboards. In India back then, we used to call them hoardings. I don't know if we still call them hoardings or not. So those big banners, not digital, they're literally old style billboards.
Billboards, yeah.
Yeah. And most of them are used for iPhone advertising. And within the iPhone, they usually show shot on iPhone. So they'll show pictures that you and I might have taken, and they're showcasing shot on iPhone. So to basically show how good their camera is and how people are using their phones. So the question is, how many more iPhones? And of course, that's prime real estate, probably the most expensive billboards that you can get in the US. And there are about a dozen one way and a dozen the other way. So Apple is spending millions of dollars, and they've been doing it for the last, 10, 15 years, ever since iPhone has been there, maybe even longer. How many iPhones are being sold? More iPhones are being sold because of those billboards. Nobody knows. Nobody can know. I mean, when Tim Cook asks that question, he's not going to get if he gets an answer, he'll get a made up answer. Nobody can tell how many more iPhones were sold because I saw the billboard. Because when you go and buy an iPhone, you never say, I'm buying it because I saw this billboard on exit 21. Why is Apple doing it? Because there's no ROI. You cannot. I know I'm spending millions, but I don't know how many more iPhones I'm selling. So why am I spending all this money? The reason I'm spending all this money, if I'm Tim Cook, is because I know that there's so much traffic on that road, and the traffic is getting worse. More and more people are spending more and more time on that road, and they are looking at these billboards because they have nothing better to do. So it's helping them in brand building. And that's where I think the ROI fails. Now, you can actually take this further. So that's billboard. There's an Apple store, right? So you can go into an Apple store, and now you have Apple stores in Delhi and Bombay. So you can walk into a store and still not buy an iPhone. You can come home and buy it online. There are other channels. There are lots of other websites. There are lots of other Facebook and Instagrams and Macworld and this and that you can read reviews. So today, it's extremely difficult to assign 100% accurate or even 80% accurate attribution as to this iPhone was sold because of this particular event or this particular incidence or channel. Usually, sales happen because of multiple of factors. I saw it on this, I heard it from this, I read the review, I saw the billboard, I saw the commercial, I was waiting at an airport and people I overheard a conversation. All of that adds up to you clicking the button or you walking into a store and making the purchase. So if you try to attribute it to any one of those channels, you're actually fooling yourself because you're wrongly attributing. So that's my definition of abuse or misuse of ROI. Which should be avoided.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole thing about, when you clarify that you love numbers, they have a meaning, it's a language, but at the same time, there's an interpretation and a story being built. I mean, when there is a quantitative research, being shared and there are conclusions, and then if you get into it, how did this happen? And you can always know that, is this the correct interpretation, or it could be, but is that the only interpretation? So if you go deeper and if you're open, you are using that number, like you said, it can be abused. So you're using it, but you've got to be conscious of the fact that it can be abused. Okay, so that was very, very nice, very beautiful examples. The impact of the billboard, the status of such expensive real estate, and these vast images, because it's all about the camera, how it plays on the mind and creates a desirability that's amazing.
Yeah, and actually on that point, there is another angle to this. So, in the advertising world, we say that if you throw an ad, let's say, I got an iMac over here. So if I see an ad for an iMac, that is an ad that's wasted on me, because why? I'm already an iMac user. So it was a waste. So you can think about it that those iPhone ads that are there, and let's say 30%, 40% of the drivers are using Apple. So are they being wasted? And my answer is no. In fact, that's the thing, a very clever thing that Apple is doing. The reason they're focused on iPhone. If I'm an iPhone user, and I've been an iPhone user, and let's say I'm going to stay an iPhone user, so in other words, no advertising is needed for me. Any advertising thrown my way is a waste. But when I see shot on iPhone, I'm sort of wait a minute, I didn't know I can take pictures like that. So I'm going to try and use my iPhone a little better next time. And what is that going to do? That's going to make me better engaged with the product, which means the next time I'm going to buy a product, I'm actually going to be predisposed to buy an iPhone, because now I got a better relationship with the product. So if they're reaching out to Android users, of course, that's the ideal target market for them. But when they reach out to Apple users, iPhone users, even they're having a positive impact. Why? Because they are building that brand loyalty. They're building that higher level of engagement, which is always helpful in building brand loyalty. So I feel it's one of the smarter things that Apple has done.
Very, very insightful. Okay, now we come to pricing, because you've covered that also in great detail. Significance of pricing, how this is not taught adequately, and how a marketer is not involved in this decision making, and how much of a difference this can make. Would you like to share something about that?
Yeah, so I discovered that sort of the hard way. When I studied marketing, or when I was doing my MBA, we were told there are 4 P's to marketing: product, pricing, place, and promotion. And nobody ever told us that pricing is an afterthought, or it's almost non-existent or anything. We were just told there are 4 P's, and then there are pros and cons to each and all that. So, but when I went into the real world, I discovered that most companies they don't sort of think of pricing as a marketing function. And in part, that's because there are, I think, various reasons for it. Many marketeers come from non-numeric background, so they're probably less comfortable in doing some math. So that's part of it. The second is that's distinction between sales and marketing is not very clear. So they may have a marketing title, but their mindset might be of selling. And mindset of selling usually means that if I lower the price, I'll sell more. That's all they know. So in other words, they don't know real marketing, real pricing, where you can increase your price and increase your profitability. And I'm not talking about unit profitability. I'm talking about your actual bottom line. So that is not intuitive to a salesperson. The salesperson says, lower the price, I'll sell more. They don't think in terms of, I raise the price and I'll actually make more money for the company. So that's part of it. And then this has been a sort of a self-feeding cycle. And I did some research a few years ago and discovered that if you look at pricing as a course, not pricing as a chapter or as a day-long course within a marketing subject, but pricing as a course in itself, like a 3-credit course in an MBA program, there are only less than 10% of the business schools that offer that. And that too, it's an elective, but 90% of schools don't even have it as an elective. So in other words, you can actually graduate with an MBA with specialization in marketing, and all pricing that you did was 1 class or 2 classes, maybe 3 hours or 6 hours max, and that's it. And if you happen to miss those 3 hours or 6 hours, you missed one of the 4 P's. So that's where we are. So pricing has been sort of pushed up or relegated to finance function or as an afterthought, or pushed it up all the way to the CEO level, and not taken as a marketing function. And that is something that bothers me. Fortunately, I've worked for some companies where, including Toyota, including Cummins, and Kodak, where marketing had the responsibility for pricing, and that's where it belongs.
One of my guests talked about how they developed a system to find the right pricing, and they figured that Starbucks was pricing itself much lower in a certain country. And I mean, it was a significant amount. I don't remember. And now I get it, now I get it why this happens. Because I mean, though the research happens about price elasticity, or how much can be stretched, etc., but that whole sensibility to be there in the foundation of a marketer while they are studying, and the significance has to be there. And I did one podcast with Tim Smith, who's written an entire book on pricing, and it was really a master class. Yeah. Okay, Atul, the random acts of marketing. I'm so sorry, it's going to stretch a little bit, but we are really.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
So when you said random acts of marketing, it's such a catchy phrase, and when you describe it, it's even more telling. And you've already set the foundation for how the consumer's life is. So why don't you tell us how this doesn't work and what is the way to look at it?
Yeah, so let me first describe what do I mean by random acts of marketing, and why does it happen? So it's fairly common, and your listeners and watchers will probably relate to this very quickly, that when things are not going too well in a company, and every company has its ups and downs. It's not not everything goes in a straight line up. In fact, very few things go up in a straight line. So when you are under pressure that, okay, something is not right, or we need to do something different, we need marketing to be more effective. Often that we need marketing to be more effective translates into, let me think of something else that I can do. So, the marketeer goes home, has a sleepless night, next day in the morning comes to work and says, you know what, I got this idea. I'm going to do this. Now we're going to do an event. We're going to do a webinar, or we're going to advertise in this channel, or I'm going to fire this and hire this, some crazy thing. Usually what that leads to is that you keep adding to your marketing tactics. So if you think of, I've used the analogy of an orchestra. So if the music is not, if you've got 4 instruments and if it's not sounding right, the tendency is, let's add another instrument. And if that still doesn't sound right, let's add another more. You keep adding. So you ultimately get to a sort of a cacophony of marketing, and you do those things randomly. In other words, whatever the first thing was going, whatever your first tactic was, that is still ongoing. You just add layer on top, you keep adding more layers. So that's what I call random acts of marketing. Just because you think it, you do it. If you stop doing random acts of marketing, that's what I call an absolute guaranteed way to get ROI on your marketing. Because all I'm asking you to do when I ask you to stop doing random acts of marketing is, I'm not asking you to stop doing anything. So if you going to the trade shows, I want you to go to the trade shows. If you're advertising in Times of India or Economic Times, I want you to advertise. But I just want you to coordinate the two. So your money you're spending in trade shows, and the money you're spending on Facebook, and the money you're spending in Economic Times, spend the same amount of money, no less. But by coordination, by linking the 3 together, you will get a higher return. So for the same expense, for the same investment, you get a higher return. By simply orchestrating, to use another analogy, or the same term on the same analogy, by orchestrating your marketing plan, you're going to get a better sound, better effect, better results from your marketing. So that's what random acts of marketing is, and that's what you should avoid doing, and that's how to avoid doing it.
So I'll take this further and request you to how marketers can avoid doing this. How should they approach and think it through? And what are the few things that they can immediately start doing so that it just works well together, it's more thought through, or whatever is required?
Yeah. Yes. So So the trick is, first of all, it's best to not get to a situation where you're doing random acts of marketing, but at some stage you will find that you are doing it. So the best way to avoid it is by respecting the big M and small m marketing. So in other words, if you do big M first and then get to small m, you are significantly reducing the probability of getting into the random acts of marketing. Why? Because you've created the foundation, you know what you're supposed to do, and you also know why you're not going to do certain things. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is that great marketing is not about deciding what to do, it's equally about deciding what not to do. So that's part of great marketing. So if you do big M marketing, you are making those choices. These are the 4 things we are going to do. These are the 16 things we are not going to do. And here's why. Now, chances are that over 2, 3, 4 years, you'll still find yourself, if you were to look back and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing too many things. So if you are in that stage, then I would say, again, do a little pause, go into a room, take a week off or whatever, basically doing a Control-Alt-Delete metaphorically, and re-looking and sort of thinking, why am I doing this? What is an end result? And again, not just ROIs. In some instances, you'll have the ROI to explain it. In some instances, you may not have an ROI, the examples that I just gave. But still, you should have a story. Why does it make sense for me to have billboards on Route 101 between San Jose and San Francisco, even though there's no ROI to it? So if you have a story that you can justify, then those are the things you should do. And things that you cannot justify or things that are now obvious to you that you are wasting your time and money, then take those out. So, I mean, I know it sounds easy, and frankly, it is easy. The difficult part is recognizing that you need to take a pause, because we all get on a treadmill and we all want to do more. I don't have the time to think what my strategy is. So I'm implementing all the tactics without thinking whether they're right or wrong, because I don't have time to do strategy. That is wrong. You always have to make time for doing some strategic thinking.
Awesome. And while you were talking, I was also reminded of how you've made the distinction between speed and velocity. So if you do the big M first and you're doing the foundation, you are ensuring you're in the right direction, whether you are slow or, how you're making progress, but at least you're not being self-destructive.
Absolutely. That is the distinction between speed and velocity, right? So I had not forgotten my 9th grade physics. That speed alone is not going to get you anywhere, because going fast in the wrong direction is actually counterproductive. So you have to get the velocity right, which means get the direction right, and then go fast.
Rapid fire. So here comes mother's best advice.
Do your thing.
Alternate profession could have been?
Astronaut.
Wow. What would you do on Mars for fun?
Look at the Earth.
As per your wife, your most often used phrase?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that requires thinking. That's a question better asked of her than of me.
Yeah. Okay. What is her most often used phrase?
I.
Okay. One thing no one knows about you.
Well, somebody knows something about me, right? So, but most people don't know about me is that I have actually driven a significant amount of distance at about 250 kilometers an hour without being in a race. So.
Oh, wow.
From Munich to Hamburg. Yeah.
Okay.
At a speed of 250. And
yes. You wanted to fly. Yeah, I can see that, right? A book you'd like to gift to all your friends cannot be your own.
My recent favorite is a book called Range. I wouldn't call it it's the best ever book, but it's my recent favorite. And that book actually talks about. Oh, sorry, you didn't want me to elaborate, so I'll just leave it at that. It's by David Epstein, called Range.
Yeah. I should have shot. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
What my mother told me: do your thing.
Awesome.
Don't think too much. What you are telling me, don't think too much.
Okay. What's something new happening in your life right now?
I am continuing to travel. Travel is my other hobby besides music. And I just crossed 50 countries and a few more to go. And I hope I can continue to do that for a few more years.
Okay. Your favorite childhood
I'm
memory?
actually leaving for Peru in 10 days.
Okay. Your favorite childhood memory?
My favorite childhood memory is in my entire schooling period. I'm still very close to all my classmates. There were 17 of us in the class, and we are still together. We have a WhatsApp group that we actively participate on. So
IITians, Delhi
no,
IIT.
this is pre IIT.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
If you were to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
very good question. I think I would choose homelessness.
Okay. Your greatest joy?
My greatest joy happens when I'm flying and listening to my headphones. So that's my combination of my two favorite activities, right? So I'm flying I'm on a 15-hour flight with my headphones and my playlist.
Transcendental.
That is heaven.
Awesome. What's a lesson that took you a long time to learn?
The relevance and the irrelevance, and both are true, relevance and the irrelevance of numbers. That took me at least 25 years to figure out.
Wow. Okay. What is one missed opportunity that you wish you could have a second chance at?
I don't think there is anything like that. In fact, I would flip it and sort of say that a lot of my success, at least half of my success, has come from the so-called missed opportunities. In other words, I wanted to do A, I was asked to do B, I was forced to do B, and that ended up being the right thing, including making a career in marketing. So my missed opportunity was I wanted to be an engineer, wanted to be a car designer. That's a missed opportunity, but I'm so glad that it's a missed opportunity because I actually made lemonade out of the so-called lemon.
Yeah. Awesome. Now it's a wrap up, Atul, and I request you to share any online addresses, emails, anything you want to say about the book, the links.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. That's one way to find me, and there are not too many Atul Minochas, and you'll figure this out. My email address, I can send it to you. You can put it wherever you need to put it. It's aminocha@chiefoutsiders.com. Or atul.minocha@me.com, personal or professional. Let's see, what else did you want?
Let's say a few lines about the book.
So yeah,
Lies.
this is the book, right? Lies, Damn Lies, and Marketing. And I think the title says it all, because the reason I wrote this book is not because I felt that the world needs another book in marketing, but I felt that the world needs to be informed of what bad marketing is, and there's a lot of it. In fact, more than half of it is bad marketing, which is the lies and the damn lies, and what is real marketing. So I hope this book serves that cause in sort of saying what's the bad stuff, what's the fake stuff, and what is the real thing. So that's what the book is about. It's an easy read. There are 19 chapters, each one maybe you can read in 10 minutes. And then one of the new ideas I had, and I'm going to show you this, is that first of all, the whole book is an easy read. I mean, you can attest to it because you've read it. But at the back, on page 193, I have a reference guide. So if you don't have the time to read this easy read book, I will say take the time to read the 13 pages because those are like short paragraphs on each chapter. And then you can go back and see, okay, this was of interest. Let me read that chapter. You don't have to read them in a sequence. So one of the things, I'll be very candid with you. One of the concerns I had when you reached out to me was, when somebody does so many podcasts on a regular basis, it's going to be very generic. It's going to be standard questions: what motivated you, and blah 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 blah. But then I was very pleasantly surprised when I received this email from you, sort of saying that I want to talk about these things. And what are those things? It became obvious to me that you had read the book. So you wanted to talk about things which were going to be of interest, as opposed to, okay, these are my standard 18 questions that I go through. So that tells me that you have deep interest in, obviously, someone like me, but you have deep interest in extracting what I have to offer or what somebody else has to offer so that they can go to your audience. So that's the reason. So my message to your audience would be that you're not going to get the same old from you. You're always going to get something that is relevant, something that's interesting, something that piques your interest, which in turn hopefully will be of value to your audience as well.
Thank you so much. That is the Jagged Edge. My channel is all about new ideas, disseminating, and I wish everybody stays jagged as well, like true and real.
Yeah, very true. I mean, it's almost the theme of my book also, that that throw the chaff out, throw the lies out, and stay true to what's real.
Yeah. Thank you so much.